I have a slide for every single one of these, but I think we're going to go into these questions so I can really get to what you guys wanted to do. But this is very, very important. Behavior and lifestyle comes first because nothing can be adhered to until you fit it into your lifestyle or understand how it could potentially fit into your lifestyle. Like one of our slogans that we always talk about is, we fit the diet into your lifestyle. We don't try to fit your lifestyle into a diet. And it's very, very important to understand for everybody. Next comes energy balance. Energy balance is calories. Calories in versus calories out. This is an equation that we can't get away from. Like I said before, hormones play a role, but if your hormones are going to crap, for lack of better terms, that's going to affect your calories in versus calories out equation. It means your body's going to expend less, so it's going to naturally burn less through exercise, but also me sitting here, I burn a certain amount of calories talking. I have way less NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, because I'm walking around on crutches. I don't move. So I'm burning way less calories every day. Those things play a role, right? Hormones can affect those things. They can affect how your body burns calories through digestion, so on and so forth. This whole equation matters. Hormones matter a lot too, but we got to take that into consideration, whether we track macros or not. After energy balance comes macros. The reason macros come second is because, one, macros build up your calories. So if I give you 150 protein, 200 carb, 50 fat, that's your macros. We calculate the protein and carb by 4, the fat by 9. That gives us the calorie intake that we have for that day. This is huge because this is a tool for this to be individualized. If I have a person who says, I train 2 or 3 times a week, I'm focused on longevity, you're probably going to have a higher fat, lower carb diet, but you might have the same calories as somebody who is relatively the same size but wants to build muscle and perform better. They need carbs. Carbs are the fuel for muscle and performance. Fat is not. Fat is the fuel for hormonal processes in our nervous system. It's also less age. When we break down carbs and we break down certain nutrients through glycolysis, which is basically like literally taking carbohydrates and turning them into fuel and stuff, we actually age more. That's an aging process. It's not significant, but very high carb diets cause more rapid aging than a high fat diet does. That's why ketogenic diets are so popular for health, disease prevention, autoimmune related. They're great for the medical community. They're not the best for training super hard. They've actually done studies on CrossFitters now that show high carb diets outperform ketogenic diets for CrossFit, for performance, for building muscle every single time. And the reason is because our body takes carbs, it turns it into glucose. That's our glycogen that stores in our muscle, and we use it for fuel. Plain and simple, right? That's why I have a couple competitive CrossFitters right now that come to me under eating. The first thing I do is I increase their carbs significantly. Thank you. And all of a sudden, they're leaner, they're performing way harder, and it's like magic. And it's like, no, I just doubled the amount of carbs you're eating. It's that easy. But it's scary because I'm adding calories, you're worried about gaining weight, so on and so forth. But macros are an individualization tool. If you're like, I'm kind of in the middle, cool, split it down the middle. Right? We have enough protein to support our body, and then we kind of just balance out carbs and fats. Or we just keep our protein and our calories in check. Protein is the most important macronutrient for aging, for health, so on and so forth. We need it. It's essential. We can't live without it. So we get our protein in check. We know our calories. Some days eat more carbs. Some days eat more fat. Just hit your calories. At the end of the day, calories are going to determine your weight loss. Macros are a tool to individualize that process, right? Micronutrients actually come after macronutrients. And this is kind of controversial because that's like putting health second, right? But the reality is if you eat salmon, blueberries, and quinoa with broccoli every day and you're getting the most micronutrients ever, but you're eating too much food, you will gain body fat. If your caloric balance is too high, if your energy balance is too high, you will gain body fat. Body fat leads to very poor hormonal and blood measurements. It just does. So you can eat the healthiest food in the world, paleo, whatever, but if you're eating too much and you gain body fat, that's a health marker that's going to decline almost everything. So we have to put it second. Now, if we're just focused on macros and we eat a bunch of junk food and I've seen people do this, they get really lean, they look great, their testosterone starts to sink, their nervous system sinks, their performance sucks, their joints hurt. We can't ignore either one. It's hard for me to do this because it's such a close second, but the reality is we have to place it this way because it is a smaller macronutrient too. They're called micronutrients for a reason. It's measured much smaller than a macronutrient. After that comes nutrient timing, and then after that comes supplements. The reason those come last is because they're not that important. If you eat 2 meals a day, and they've done studies on this, if you eat 2 meals a day versus 3 meals, 4 meals, 5 meals, 6 meals, they've even done upwards of 8 meals a day, and they have all these different groups. Nobody saw any difference in any results as long as calories and macros were equated. So if you hit your calories, you're golden. That's kind of the trick here. So now, nutrient timing is important for two scenarios. If you're an athlete and you're training multiple times a day. Like I said, I have some CrossFitters that they do train multiple times a day. High-level competitive CrossFitter athletes are insane. Some of the stuff they do, it's crazy. It's super fascinating. I love it. But they train like 4 or 5 hours a day sometimes. Morning, PM, like I have this one lady who owns a gym, and the gym runs, and she trains in the morning, she trains in the middle of the day, and a lot of times she trains again at night because she's trying to get to the games. Like that's part of it, and it's crazy. For her, nutrient timing is very important. We're eating at a certain time before her first session, right after her second session, right before her first or second session, between her second and third, if there is a third one, and then we're having just a shake before bed because her last training session's late. If she doesn't do that training session, we're having another meal that's a little bit larger, like a dinner. So there is a role to play, but they're training multiple times a day. How many people here train 3 times a day? Me either. It's not that important, right? Now, going back to what I said about the post-workout shake, maybe you only train once a day, but you train really hard. I saw some people in the class before this really getting after it. I would have a lot of you guys drink a post-workout shake because by the time you get home, take a shower, change, you're about to cook, and then the kid starts crying, then you got to calm them down, and then you get back to cooking, and you're like, you know what, screw this, I'm just going to like sit back and just grab a snack. You should have just had a post-workout shake, and then you don't have to worry about any of it in the first place. Now I can calmly and like relaxed go get my meal, cook the meal, take my time to make the meal so I can make a good meal instead of rushing to grab something shitty out of the pantry. Right? Does that make sense? So it's context. The other time nutrient timing matters, adherence. Somebody doesn't like to eat 6 times a day because of their work. They can't. Eat 1 time a day. Do some intermittent fasting. Eat 2 times a day. Eat 3 times a day. When can you eat? Maybe 1 big meal and then like a couple snacks. Cool. Hit your calories. Adherence is easier. Results are going to come because of the calories. You're going to be less stressed because you don't got to worry about eating these meals all the time. Now all of a sudden, things are better, right? In the same context, sometimes I will encourage clients to eat more meals because I know long-term adherence will be better because if they don't, they won't hit their calories. So if I tell you, you only got to eat 2 meals a day and you're fine, but then 2 weeks go by and I'm like, hey, have you hit your macros this week? No, not at all. It's really hard with 2 meals. Okay, so we need to eat 3 meals. Right? So there's kind of this balance where we have to kind of play, and that's kind of the art of coaching where I say, hey, I would make this suggestion because I don't think you're actually going to adhere. The thought of 2 meals a day sounds really low stress, but actually adhering to it is a different story.